Hola, yo soy Eddie.
And I'm Brittany.
We are EdificandoBridges.
The following content is the intellectual property of the original creator referenced in the description of this video.
El contenido del siguiente video es propiedad intelectual del creador, citado en la descripción del video.
We offer translation and interpretation services in English and Spanish.
Ofrecemos servicios de traducción e interpretación en inglés y español. Gracias.
I'm Gaby Pérez Islas, and I welcome you to After the Loss, a podcast created to help you find some direction after going through a big loss. Get ready for 40 minutes of hope and work on grieving. Let's get started. The best way to honor someone who has passed away is to continue their legacy. If they made an effort to make us happy in life, why would we repay them in death with our own unhappiness? This is how I want to start this episode. This is a fragment from my book, Cómo curar un corazón roto, How to Heal a Broken Heart, a book that has been there for many families and people that are facing loss. I've created this podcast thinking of you, to be there with you, living this journey in the best possible way. I believe that there's a different way to experience a loss, not by playing the victim, not from a place of guilt, or from a place of what if, and not from a place of intense suffering. I believe we can experience loss in a way where we can turn it into an homage for the person who is no longer with us, and we can move forward with love instead of pain. But we have to do it step by step. And of course, that's the grieving process. That's my mission and privilege, to be able to be there with you on this journey. And now, here's the first episode of After the Loss. Something very important to bear in mind is when we use the word loss, it isn't because we've lost something or somebody because we don't know where we left it. The ones who are lost are us. We are lost without that love, without that job, without that relationship, without that person. I feel lost. The work of mourning is this, an adaptive process to find yourself, to readjust to a new reality where you have to live without what you lost. I need to start by clarifying that a loss could be something that I had, but it could also be something that I wished for and was never able to get. Socially, it's much easier to acknowledge the one who had something and lost it. We're talking about an orphan, a widow, or someone who perhaps lost their job, because it was something tangible that I had and now I don't. But what about that person who wanted to become a parent and was never able to make it? Or maybe someone who wanted to be recognized or be successful in a specific area and couldn't reach it. Maybe that professional fulfillment that never came. That's also a loss. Something I dreamed of, that life plan or plan A that I always had in my mind and was never able to make it happen. Or at least it didn't happen as thoroughly as I had envisioned it. That is painful. And it's sad that we don't have the support to understand that. You know something? There's something that bothers me a lot about support or the lack of it. For instance, when you go through a miscarriage and people tell you, "Oh, don't worry, you're young. Trust God's plan." Or, "Nature is wise. You'll be able to have more children." Or that woman who becomes a widow and gets told, "You can move on and redo your life." Why don't they use the same expressions when it comes to men? When a man goes through a divorce or loses his partner, he never gets told you can redo your life, because in a way society assumes that a man's life is fulfilled, and therefore only one area in his life was affected. Well, it's the same for women, but losses change our direction in life without a doubt. I'm going to tell you why. People who already know me, people who've been following Gaby Thanatologist for a while, they know that I always speak the truth. And sometimes the truth can seem rough. I made a promise to myself 22 years ago when I started working as a thanatologist. And so far, I've kept it. I will never tell anybody what they want to hear. I will always tell them what they need to hear. There's a huge difference with this. Because if my goal was to be liked, to be popular, to have tons of followers, I know the kind of phrases I could use. The kind of phrases that invite commiseration and pity. Oh, poor me. But that's not who I am. And this is a podcast that has been specially created to give hope. To tell all people grieving that there are ways, like I've said, to continue, and as long as we're willing, we can do it. It doesn't matter how dark the night is, the sun is always going to come out, for those of us who are willing to get out and see it. And if we don't hold on to the darkness, we're not allowing ourselves to move on. So I started by defining what loss is. Now, let me tell you what grief is. Because this is what I do. I explain practical steps to follow to move forward. Grief, as I told you, is the dealing with all the emotions that began with a loss. It feels like you're on a roller coaster of emotions that you can't stop or control. And you go through it with a lot of fear. It's like you're going across a desert. But you don't have to do it alone. You can have some company. And that's why I'm here. To offer you a hand, to offer thanatology as a life tool, so we can start inserting philosophy into this great pain. This grieving process is not going to be done overnight. I usually say there are not microwavable or express grieving processes. Sometimes my patients want a quick fix. I want to tell you about a story, a specific case. It was a young man who came to see me, and I could tell it was more because he was forced to come, maybe by his parents, more than wanting to come by himself. Anyway, he came in, threw himself in a chair, and said, "Okay, I'm here. Do your magic." Oh my. I don't do magic, I said. If there's an aspect of me that's an alchemist, it's not within my practice. So I asked him, "What's magic?" And he went on to say, "Yes, take away my sadness, take away my pain, put a smile on my face again." I responded to him, "You can reach that state with thanatology advising, but it has to be done by you. I'm just going to be a facilitator." I'm a firm believer that if there was a magic wand that could take pain away, people would say, "Gaby, you could become a millionaire." But no, I wouldn't use it. I believe pain has a purpose in our lives. If I take away your pain, it's like if I put a carpet on your rocky path so that you'd never have to suffer walking on the rocks. I wouldn't be letting you grow. On the contrary, I'd be limiting you. I would be making you useless, because I would basically be chewing things for you to swallow. Whether we like it or not, losses are paths for growth. So this suffering is going to be navigated, but not in a linear way. Let's have this very clear. Because the 5 stages of grief, the masterpiece by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, has been misinterpreted by many psychologists and psychiatrists. They say her exercises are obsolete, that her theory is incomplete. And that's not true. Well, what we have to understand is that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross never said that the 5 stages were going to be navigated in a linear way, or that you had to go through all of them, or that you would go through each stage just once. As I said, it's a roller coaster of emotions. It's like an electrocardiogram. Systole and diastole, up and down, up and down. That's life, my dear listeners. And from wherever you're listening to this podcast, I want the first part to be very clear. Life is an ocean, and in the ocean, there are waves. Don't expect life to be a swimming pool with still water. That's not life. If we don't start learning how life works, of course it's going to let us down, because we had certain expectations, and that's always the foundation of unhappiness. Before talking about the 5 stages of grief, I want you all to be aware of how you're feeling. How are you? Really, sit down and feel. How do you feel listening to someone talking about these topics? For some people, everything that has to do with death, pain, grieving, loss, the reaction is no thanks. Other people connect immediately and dive in deeply. Now that I'm saying this, I want to share with you my personal opinion about grieving. I believe grief is a trampoline. A trampoline you walk on and then jump off to get to know the deepest waters. A depth you wouldn't be able to reach if you just threw yourself from the edge of the swimming pool. To reach the deep is to understand life, and that should be a prerequisite before we experience a loss. It would be great if life had this perfect order and everything worked that way. What happens with my patients is that they come to me because they're grieving a loss, but they're unable to learn about death because they don't yet know about life. Wait, what? You must be asking yourselves. Gaby, it's not fair. Why did she have to die? She was such a good person. Why not other people? There's so many bad people out there. Why not them? Yes, I'm not saying that's not true. There are lots of bad people out there. But death is not a punishment. And this is the first point. Death is not a punishment. Death is not something that should only happen to bad guys. It happens to everybody equally. It's just that we don't see it. We choose to see that bad guys do well for themselves, they have good jobs, they're wealthy, they travel all over the world, and it seems as if they have perfect lives. But bad people suffer, and good people do too. What happens in life is not about prizes and punishments, and everyone comes through this life with a different script compared to the rest. All are distinct. Not everyone has to learn the same lessons. Not all of us have to go through the same experiences. We're not all called to get married, to graduate, to publish a book, appear on TV, or have children. Every person has a unique life. And that life is that someone had was a complete life. Point number 2, in understanding life. She had so much more life to live, Gaby. Who says so? Who says she needed to live more? It's our desire that she had lived longer. But yeah, there are lives that last 9 years, 11, or 90, and every single life is a complete life. Let's understand that the person who dies has graduated from life. No, it can't be that way, people must be saying. And I'd love to see your faces right now. No, Gaby, you don't know my personal situation. Things shouldn't have happened this way. There's a lot of arrogance behind trying to rewrite life's book, to undo what God has done, to erase the period that was put and exchange it for an ellipsis. The end is the end. And here comes the third point, which has to do with life and death. We don't get the death that we deserve. We get the death that we get. So yes, our dear one may have passed away due to COVID-19, or an earthquake, or cancer, or a person who robbed and killed them, or an accident. All of those are just circumstances. Circumstances that life uses so that our destiny is fulfilled. When facing uncertainty, not knowing what's going to happen, there's something we can be sure that we're all going to lose. At some point, we're all going to experience a loss, and we're all going to die. The thing is that there are lives where this seems much harsher. Yes, we see people who lost their parents when they were young, or a sibling, or live life like it's a constant battle, and other people whose lives seem perfect. But death comes to everyone, and loss touches all of us. People who have experienced loss since an early age have an advantage, a huge advantage that's called resiliency. Because all those things that happened didn't destroy them. It has built them up and shaped them into better people. This is very important to know. On the contrary, if you've had an easy life, and at the age of 30 you experience a huge loss, perhaps the death of a mom or dad, you're just getting started with dealing with serious things. And maybe you doubt that you have the tools and resources necessary to face it. But I want you to calm yourselves. That's the purpose of this space. We are already equipped with what we need to face a loss. Yes, because losing is natural. As much as we think the ways in which the loss happened is not natural, and when I say this, I think, of course, about kidnapping people. I feel like it's one of the most anti-natural losses. But even if it's this type of loss, you have what's required to deal with it. Let's repeat the phrase, which is the number one phrase in my kit for dealing with loss. What happened to me is not going to destroy me. It is going to build me up and make me a better person. This is the first decision we must make. I did not choose what happened to me, but I'm able to choose how I deal with it. We are not what we lost. We are whatever we do with that loss. Our quality of life is going to depend on the way we face a loss. Yes, what you heard is right. I know it's a lot, but I don't like labeling and putting people in boxes based on what they've lost. Look, there goes the woman who lost a child. Look, that's the guy who got divorced. Oh, there's that lady who got fired from her job. No, please. As humans, we are much more than that. But the inspiration and example we can offer to others without trying to do it, because I'm aware that grieving people don't like to be a role model to anybody. They did not want to be that example, to be told, "You're a very strong person, I look up to you." No, we did not want anybody admiring us for that. We just wanted to be happy. But if something did happen to us, we can attest to how to experience that loss, from having faith or not, from having a philosophy in life or not, from being smart and prudent or careless and impulsive. Depending on how you deal with your loss, it will directly impact your quality of life. Facundo Cabral, a great philosopher, used to say, "A person who is not happy spreads bitterness to others." So right there lays a huge responsibility on how you deal with your loss, avoiding becoming a person that's difficult to coexist with. That person that maybe doesn't spread bitterness to everybody, but does spread it to their close relatives. When do we take the time to think about death? Almost never. If we go to a baptism and we see the child, the breakfast, the presents, a beautiful life just beginning, we don't think beyond that moment and those emotions. But what about when we attend a funeral service? At that moment, we question everything. But he was so young. He had so much life to live. But he had little children. I want to tell you that none of those things exempt you from dying. Wait, Gaby. I have a child with a disability. Nothing can happen to me. I would like to say that you're right, but sadly, no. Death does not distinguish based on gender, age, financial status, or special conditions. When we stop to think that the person who died was about my age, that it could have happened to me, that death is going around the way it has happened, especially with the pandemic, that the amount of people infected with the virus is more every day, and we start to think that the next one could be us. That mere fear is enough to make you go into a deep existential crisis. A thought of, no, please, I want 2 or 3 more years to live, and I swear I'm going to do things right this time around. And that's because we're great negotiators. But no, it's time to do the right thing now. There's no time to be wasted. And if the person who died was happy, which is the most important question I ask when I visit a terminal patient at a hospital, I always ask, was he happy? Have you been happy? Oh yes, Gaby, you have no idea. He liked to dance, he was always enjoying life, he liked to do stuff, he had a bunch of friends. Then it's been worth it. However, I've had patients, 90-year-old patients, and when I ask the question of what their families are like, no, Gaby, my dad never rested. He was always working. He would never close his business. He wouldn't enjoy life, never went on vacation. He was always complaining. He had a rough childhood and he never worked through it. What a waste. 90 years and he was not happy? That's why I apply the typical and wise thanatologist saying, today is the occasion. If you're listening right now to this podcast, it might be because you've had a loss, or you're a health professional and you want more resources to assist your patients, or simply you've read some of my books and you're a thanatology follower already. If that's the case, congratulations. Thanatology tells you there's no time to waste. The occasion is today. The moment of hello could easily become the moment of goodbye. Since I mentioned my books, I will share the titles, because if you don't know them, this is a great opportunity for you to read about this discipline, which, believe me, is not something serious and depressing. On the contrary, it's very motivational and inspirational. How to heal a broken heart, choose not to fear, traveling through life, the girl whose world fell apart, convince me to live, my very special novel, and A Path for Healing, a book I co-wrote with 3 other authors and friends of mine. This is my collection of books, and I'm sure that right now, one of those titles is resonating with you. It is resonating because you're looking to learn more about life and grieving and what we're looking for with this podcast, what to do after a loss. I want to guide you through the first, very, very important steps to follow. We'll go slowly, hand in hand, without rush, but also without stopping. I want to share another interesting anecdote. One time, a very busy businesswoman came to see me, and she said, "Look, I already wrote everything I've thought and felt. I wrote a letter to my parent who passed away, so I wanted to be ahead of the game before my appointment with you, and I also read 3 of your books." She had everything ready. She was in a rush. Then she went on to ask me, "Gaby, tell me, how long does the grief caused for losing a parent last?" I answered, "Look, between 1 and 2 years, more or less. I don't like to make this a kitchen recipe." And she asked, "Is that the minimum?" She was bargaining the amount of time to go through her grieving process. And as I said before, I don't like rushing these processes, because the people who tell me, "No, Gaby, my mom died on a Friday and the following Monday I was back to work. We can't be crying all the time. This is life and it is what it is." They're trying to rationalize everything, and they don't let it sink into their hearts. The mind and heart take different amounts of time to process things. I get terrified for people who haven't cried enough, who haven't paused enough, who haven't missed enough. And this is a great word, enough. Just the right amount. You have to cry it out. It's not about making crying your attitude in life, but we do have to cry, of course. It's a great mechanism that we have. It helps us express our emotions. And stuff that happens in life deserves some good crying. And let's not compare one loss with another, ever. Every person going through a loss is at 100% of their pain. Do not minimize saying, oh no, it's just that I lost a pet, but there are people who have lost a child. No, your pain is yours. And for me and for thanatology, it's as valid as any other. So try to experience this podcast step by step with me. Let's go with step number 1. What are we going to do to deal with this loss? In a way, I have stated it already, but I'm going to repeat it. We have to make a choice. If you are going to decide that what happened is not going to destroy you, then count on me. Because if you're the type of person who thinks, no, I will never be happy, I won't forgive myself about what happened, there's no way I could smile again, I will always be mourning. If that's the way you're thinking, then I'm afraid I'm not the right person to help you in that commiseration. Never in my life will I disrespect you by saying, poor you, because I don't believe in that. When we refer to someone as a poor person, we're believing that they don't have what it takes to move forward. And to me, that's disrespectful. No question about it. It's very hard what happened to you, but I know you have what it takes to come out of the dark. Repeat these kinds of phrases to yourself. Trust in yourself. Be your own friend in this process. You are going to need it, trust me. Especially now in the time of the pandemic, when we need people to support us, a shoulder to cry on. It's more difficult to find nowadays. Everybody is sad and dealing with their own losses, and they forget to call other people who have experienced loss. They forget to establish contact in some way, to be present in the distance. I have a big community of followers on YouTube with my Thanato tips, little tips that help you deal with losses, and I highly recommend them to you. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Gaby Thanatologist, and join me with other people to receive my Thanato tips and my different sections I offer, and all the content that I also upload to Instagram Live once a month. I'm always looking for spaces and ways to reach you exactly for that, to heal a broken heart. What happens if we don't work on our grieving? If we don't do it, then our baggage becomes very heavy to carry because we're holding grudges, resentments, and misery. And it haunts us throughout our lives. It lingers very slowly, and to be honest, there's no time to be wasted. Since we don't know how many more years we can count on, we have to use our time wisely and move forward, not to get stuck in frustration, to spend the rest of my life crying for somebody. And here I want to clarify another important thing. We have believed, because that's what society has taught us, that the more I love someone, the longer I have to be sad because they're gone. If I adored my brother, then I have to spend many years of sadness and depression, crying, so that the rest of the people see how much I loved him. It's almost as if the love we had for someone was proportional to the pain of their absence. That's a lie. When I spend too much time sad and depressed, it's not because I love the person very much. On the contrary, it might be an indicator that I haven't loved them in the best way. It might mean that I have regrets, guilt, remorse, a lot of why didn't I, or why did I do this or that. Instead, if I have the satisfaction of having done the right thing, that is the special key that will help me in my grieving process. It will help me to move on. Repeat to yourselves, I did the best I could with the resources I had. and the circumstances I had. Yes, of course. Today I would have done it better, but that's because today we just learn more. It was the first time you experienced that loss. It's almost like if I told you now, hey, why don't you all get the best grades in 6th grade if it was so easy? It's easy now that you've gone through college, university, and you're a professional, but back then it wasn't that easy. And a loss is difficult to handle. To let go of what we love and who we love or what makes us feel secure is very complicated. Let me tell you something quite personal, because this is a very intimate space. When my mom passed away, a lot of people approached me, even on social media. They'd say, Gaby, we're so sorry for your loss, but the good thing is that you're an expert in the matter. Okay, I'm an expert in processing grief and pain, but I'm not an expert in having my mom die. It was the first time she died, and she was the only mom I had, of course. She was my mom. And we don't love our parents for being young or healthy. You love them because of that intimate connection you have with them. So you, experts in physical and mental health who are listening, experience your grief as regular people, not from your professional occupation. It may be difficult to remove your doctor hat and cry for the loss of a mother, a brother. Just do it as any other person on earth. Do it that way. Also, as a psychologist, don't overthink or overanalyze the situation. Just feel it. As Sister Joan said, the heart has reasons that reason doesn't understand, and your grief is lived from your heart. Those 12 inches that exist between the head and the heart, it seems like a short distance, but when it comes to feelings, it takes a lot of time, and it's difficult and complicated, but don't get scared. That's why I'm here. That's why we're here together, so that we can walk this path together. I want to leave with a final reflection, the same way I'll be doing each episode. It's for you to not only think about it, but also for you to make a decision. And remember, we already discussed that is the first step in this grieving process. There is no right way to experience a loss. There is no such thing as a handbook for you to know what you should do step by step. You just have to allow yourself to feel and go through that pain. Don't avoid it. Feel it. Because feeling pain means you're alive. It's much worse not to feel anything than to feel pain. Trust me. To feel nothing is like being dead. And as long as we have life, there is hope. If this pain that you're feeling today is the price that you had to pay for having that person in your life, then pay for it. I'm going to ask you the following. If you had known it was going to hurt this much, would you have chosen not to know that person? Not to have them in your life? I'm sure your answer is no. Despite knowing about your intense pain, you'd still choose to know them, and you would still be willing to pay the price. Way to go. That's the spirit. We will pay it together. Because love is not free, as we've been told. Love has a price, and the price is exactly the pain you feel when what you love is gone. However, love always wins. Imagine if we could put love and pain on a weighted scale. On one tray we have all the pain, it's very heavy. But on the other tray we have love, and love wins. Love is always going to weigh more. The love we have for the one who just left, but also the love for life, the love for ourselves, the love we have for the people that are still here with you. I wish you all much love in your lives. I'm very excited to start this new project with you all. We're running out of time for this first episode of my podcast, After the Loss. If you like this episode, please leave some comments. Hit the like button and share it. Let's make this information viral. We're in times where many people want to have fun, forget about life. They want to laugh, and that's totally okay. I think that's right. But we also need to make some room for reflection, for pause, for us to stop and think in a philosophical way about life. I want to recommend that you watch a movie, and I'll try to do the same in each episode, because I love movies, and I believe there's a lot of thanatology content in some movies. It's a science fiction movie called Arrival. It's from 2016. Wait, what does a movie about aliens have to do with grieving? Okay, try to watch this movie, understanding that the arrival of these beings from another galaxy is exactly a loss. Okay, let's put it this way. The pain and the loss will show up in our lives unexpectedly, like a thief in the night. And it arrives to our homes, and it's almost as if we start a war against it. Our first reaction is, they're coming to attack and destroy us. And all we had to learn in this movie is that we had to learn a new language. A new language to be able to communicate, to open our hearts. And we don't know how to approach a loss. In this movie, all these people come close to a spaceship with special gear, masks, gloves, very similar to the way we're living nowadays. But we have to walk the walk. In this movie, Arrival, you can see clearly what I was talking about. You see a mother who knew her daughter was going to die from cancer, and despite knowing that, she still decides to give birth to her. That's bravery. And that's my recommendation with all my love. You can find me on social media on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at Gaby Tanatologa. www.gabytanatologa.com.mx. I hope to host in-person events soon to share with you, but in the meantime, there are a lot of resources online. There are 10 of my best conferences recorded live with an audience, and my online certificate you can access and buy all together or in 2 sections. The platform to access it is gabytanatologa@teachable.com. I'm here for you. I hope you tune into the next episode of this podcast, After the Loss.